They say history is written by the living, but what if the dead wrote it first? The letter arrived on a gray morning in March 2012, sealed in wax and addressed in faded black ink to the Royal Archive Office, marked simply, "To be opened upon her death." There was no return address, no postage stamp, no indication of when or where it had been sent. It looked like it had passed through centuries, not postal routes. The envelope sat in a locked drawer at the bottom of an archival cabinet in Windsor Castle, dismissed as a hoax or perhaps some grim prank. Over the years, staff came and went, but the letter remained untouched. No one dared open it, not even the archivists, not until protocol demanded it. When Queen Elizabeth II died in 2022, the envelope was retrieved under silent ceremony and transferred to a secure reading room inside the Royal Archives. What unfolded from within its fragile parchment would send a ripple of dread through every official in that building. Because the letter didn't just mention her death. It predicted the exact date, the precise time, and the circumstances under which the public would learn about it. It referenced details that had never been shared, things that only her inner circle had known. But more disturbing still was the signature at the bottom. It read, E.R. 1952, her own initials, her own coronation year, written in a hand eerily similar to her own. What began as a curiosity turned into a classified event. The palace quietly restricted access to the letter. Digital records were not permitted. Only a handful of archivists were allowed to review it, and even then only under direct supervision. One of those archivists was a woman named Clara Murchison. In her late 40s, she was known for her precision, her discretion, and her obsession with patterns in royal correspondence. Clara had catalogued everything from the Tudor era to modern times, but nothing, in her decades of experience, had ever disturbed her like this letter. She wasn't just disturbed by its contents. She was haunted by its material. The paper itself didn't match any known production techniques from the 20th century. The ink appeared to have organic properties, reacting faintly to human touch. When she held it under ultraviolet light, a faint second message revealed itself, running perpendicular to the primary lines. History repeats because it never ended. Clara didn't sleep that night. Her dreams were filled with flickering candlelight, distant horses, and the sound of bells tolling underwater. When she returned the next day, she requested a full spectral analysis of the ink, a request that was quietly denied. The deeper she looked into the letter, the more inconsistencies she found, or what she thought were inconsistencies. The handwriting matched dozens of known letters from the Queen's early reign, but the age of the ink, carbon-dated, placed it at least 100 years older than that. None of it made sense, and yet, the predictions were uncannily accurate, down to the last ceremonial phrase issued to the press. That was when Clara made the mistake of checking the archive's transfer log. The letter hadn't just been received by the Royal Archives. It had arrived in person, delivered by an unnamed man dressed in 19th century formal wear, logged by a junior clerk who was later dismissed for mental instability. His final note before departure had been scrawled across a blank receipt form. It read, "She wrote to herself, from somewhere else." The handwriting matched the letter exactly. That was the moment Clara realized this was not a hoax. It wasn't even a message. It was a warning Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching her from inside the pages of that letter. Over the next week, she secretly photographed fragments of the document and stored them on an encrypted USB, hidden in the spine of an out-of-print royal biography. She knew what she was doing could cost her job, but whatever this was, it extended far beyond the crown. It touched something ancient, something buried so deep it had survived centuries of silence. Her obsession led her to the old wing of the Royal Archive, a part of Windsor most had forgotten. It was closed off after a fire in 1913, the corridor still scarred with blackened stone and soot-stained shelves. But Clara had the access. She used a master key she wasn't meant to have. At the far end of the wing, tucked behind a warped metal cabinet, she discovered a single wooden drawer labeled Unfiled. Inside were stacks of unopened letters, all addressed to various monarchs. No stamps, no seals, just names. Some were smeared with what looked like ink. Others had dried, flaking red stains. She found one labeled Victoria, 1901, Final Night. Another, Edward VIII, Abdication. But then she saw it. One with her name on it. Clara Murchison, 2022. Do not open until after the fire. Her breath caught. The room spun. She didn't remember how long she stood there, staring at the letter. The smell of scorched wood filled her lungs. Her hands trembled as she turned the envelope over. No seal, no handwriting, just a folded crease and her own name, typed in the exact font used on her royal ID badge. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, bearing only one sentence. You will find her reflection, but not her body. There was no context, no signature, no date, but something shifted in her chest. Not panic, not dread, but a strange, cold resignation. She slipped the letter into her coat pocket and fled the archive. That night, Clara dreamed of the Queen again. Not as the elderly woman the world mourned, but young, veiled, staring at herself in a tall, gilded mirror in Buckingham Palace. The mirror rippled like water. The Queen whispered something to her reflection, and it whispered back. When Clara woke, her hands were covered in ink. Not real ink, she checked. But her skin looked as though it had soaked into words while she slept. Reversed letters faintly etched in her palms. She rushed to the bathroom and held her hands up to the mirror. Spelled out 2 words. She knew. Clara didn't go into work the next day. She told the archive she was ill. In truth, she had started digging through private contacts, academics, historians, fringe researchers who dealt in forbidden texts and occult theory. Most dismissed her. But one, a retired Cambridge scholar named Aldous Wren, didn't. He only asked one question when she told him about the letter. Did you touch the ink? When Clara said yes, he fell silent. Then, almost whispering, he said, It's not ink. It's royal blood mixed with gall. Used in ceremonial documents to anchor presence. They weren't writing history, they were binding it. Clara asked if he was joking. He wasn't. He explained that in certain royal orders, hidden from public view since the 1700s, monarchs kept a ritual scribe. These scribes didn't record events. They predicted them, using methods that blurred the line between mysticism and madness. According to Wren, some monarchs had pre-written their own deaths. Not as metaphors, but as contracts. They believed that if a death was written down properly before it happened, it could be controlled, delayed, or even redirected. But it came with a price. The presence bound to the ink became residual, trapped, alive in paper. Clara ended the call and stared at her desk. The letter was there, folded neatly. She hadn't told Wren the most important part. When she returned from the old wing, the original letter, the one signed AR 1952, had changed. A new line had appeared at the bottom, in fresh ink. You opened yours too early. By the time Clara realized the letter was still writing itself, it was too late. New lines began to appear every day, always in the same fine black ink. Each sentence more specific, more invasive. First, it described the clothes she had worn the day before. Then the dreams she hadn't told anyone about. Then, it described what she would find in her hallway at 3:07 a.m. She waited up that night, too afraid to sleep. And when the clock struck 3:07, the hallway light flickered once, then went out. Through the glass door at the end of the corridor, she saw a shadow, tall, still, wearing what looked like ceremonial robes from another century. She didn't move. The shadow didn't either, until it slowly lifted one hand and pointed directly at her. When the light came back on, there was nothing there. She fled her flat that morning and checked into a tiny hotel in Eton, paying cash, no ID. She kept the letter with her, hidden in a sealed plastic folder inside her suitcase. But the writing didn't stop. Each morning, more appeared. And on the third morning, a date arrived, August 11th, 2025. Below it, you will walk into the archive. You will not walk out. That was 3 days away. Clara didn't believe in fate, not truly. But the more she read, the more the words felt like memories waiting to happen. The letter was no longer a document. It was a map of her future, and it was closing in. She returned to Windsor one last time. If this was a curse, she had to trace it back to its source. She didn't go to her office. She went to the Queen's private suite, still sealed since her passing. She bribed a junior custodian for access, told him she had final inventory duty for the estate records. The moment she stepped inside, she felt it. The mirror, the same one from her dreams. 7 feet tall, Baroque frame, covered in a cloth, but humming, somehow like it was waiting. She pulled the cloth away. Her reflection blinked. She did not. Her reflection stepped forward. She stood frozen. And then, the reflection smiled. From the other side of the glass, the Queen was behind her. Young, regal, watching. Clara turned around, but the room was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, the Queen was now looking out from behind her reflection, not beside it. As if she were inside Clara, wearing her skin. A line of ink ran down the mirror's surface. One must carry the crown, even in death. Clara stumbled backward. The mirror surface rippled, not glass, not water, something else. It swirled with ink. Gall. Blood. Suddenly, it clicked. This wasn't a curse on the Queen. It was a transfer. The letter hadn't predicted her death. It had ensured someone would carry it forward. Clara wasn't meant to open her letter early, because the letter was a ritual, a seal, an invitation. She had accepted it, and now it was binding her. She raced from the suite and down the corridor. But every hallway twisted, doubled back. The rooms no longer connected the way they once had. She passed the same portrait twice, then again. And then she found herself, impossibly, outside room 13 of the old wing, sealed since 1913. The door opened on its own. Inside was a desk, and another letter, addressed to the next. Her hands moved on their own. She sat down, picked up a quill, and began to write. Her first line? This letter predicted the Queen's death 10 years before. Story is finished.